In New York, the way that it really works is that it makes it very hard to vote in New York if you are a renter, which, a city, when you think about New York City, a city with 8 million people, most of them renters.
Lot of renters.
You
Lot of
know,
renters.
what that does is that it decreases the power of New York City vis-a-vis the rest of the state. In fairness, the first massive voter registration law in the country was passed in New York in the 1870s. Why? Because New York was getting a lot of immigrants from Europe, was getting a lot of former freed slaves migrating up from the South, and they decided that they didn't want to have all those people who were going to be eligible to vote. They didn't want to have all those people able to vote, so they added a voter registration requirement. But critically, that voter registration requirement in New York State only applied to New York City. So if you lived in Brooklyn, you had to register to vote. But if you lived in Syracuse, if you lived in Albany, if you lived on Long Island, you didn't have to register to vote. Why? Because white folks with money lived in those places, whereas black people, immigrants, lived in the city, and those were the people they didn't want to allow to vote. New York State is not just one of the worst now, it's one of the worst historically when it comes to voting rights.
So why do voting rights advocates, why do they just keep skipping New York State? Like you don't see voting rights groups holding mass rallies in Albany or New York City or whatever the heck. What? Because it's blue?
Because it's blue. I mean, that's the only answer that I've got. Because it's blue. Because they think that they've got bigger fish to fry. And if you make it easier for people to register vote, and vote in states like North Carolina and states like Mississippi, obviously in states like Georgia, you can flip those states. You can turn those states from red to blue, because as we know, Texas, and the line about Texas is always, Texas is not a red state, it's a non-voting state, right? And if you got a lot of more people registered in Texas, you could flip Texas blue, and that would completely change the map of America.